we're live.
And we're live. Welcome everybody to your favorite weekly series, Grace Under Pressure, where we interview members of the Order of the Rose from around the known world. This week we are really lucky to be joined by Countess Gwen. Next week's to be determined, but for now, let's meet our hosts.
Gwen, that was him not wanting to say your entire name.
No, that's
that's what I
long and Welsh. Just roll with it.
Guinevere, right?
Yep.
Fair. Owen Ap Morgan, is that right?
Yeah, that's what I said.
So welcome this week and every week to Sir Joel. That would be my co-host there, who puts up with a lot of ribbing and teasing, but he does it with such grace that he just keeps coming back for more. He started in the SCA in the now Kingdom of Northshield, and that 16 years ago, and is now in Callantyre. And he was knighted in 2018 in Artemisia, and his consort is his wife, the Honorable Lady Aniela. And the fun fact about Joel for this week is he is sick and tired of shoveling the snow from his gosh darn driveway. And Joel, what is the snow you're speaking of?
I'm so tired of it. We've gotten so much, and we're supposed to get another foot tonight. And I'm tired of it because I've had to shovel my driveway way too much.
What's the modern name of your geographic location approximately?
Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Okay, so what I would say to you is that famous play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Move to a place like Cedar Rapids and end up with snow. You need to move to a place where there's no snow.
Well, I'm trying to.
Tell the U.S. government to move you to a place with no snow.
I keep trying to tell them I need to go to Hawaii or somewhere, or that Jamaica needs some freedom, but they won't do it. It's all right, and that might have been a bad joke. I'm sorry, everybody at home. But as always, I am joined by my favorite heckler in the world, my co-host, Duchess Dagmar of Ontario. Her first reign was as a princess of Sinagua in the West, and she has since gone on to have 2 reigns in Ontario with her husband, Duke Thorne Yalson. I'm pretty sure I actually got his name down in 3 weeks in a row now, or I haven't screwed that up.
Yeah, very well.
This week's fun fact about her Grace, unfortunately, not that fun. Her sciatic nerve's acting up a little bit, not a good time. So
it's stupid. It's being stupid. And if I had my sciatic nerve problems where you are, yeah, I would enjoy watching you shovel the snow. Well, I didn't do that. Though I will say today we were very active. I just finished working at the University of Washington after 17 years. And I'm going back to school so I can teach special ed, which is really exciting. But I had to clean out my 17 years worth of stuff out of my office at the UW, and really needed to get it done and had help today. So we went and did it. And, once you get going and you're moving around, it's not as bad. It's the standing up and sitting down over and over again. That's the problem. So I'm doing fine. Joel, I'm sorry about your snow. And we'll just leave it at that. Maybe you can send me a picture. So, all right. As always, we'd love to extend a special thank you to Ashaxi and Rifkin for hosting Grace Under Pressure on the Sisters Interview Network. We really appreciate all that you do to make these possible. And Joel, if you would please introduce our guest.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So everyone watching from home, as always, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and spending it with us. We know there's a lot of content, so we appreciate you making the time for us. This week, we are joined by Countess Gwen of Hermer, who hails from the barony of Hermer. And she is a Laurel. She is a Black Griffin, and came very highly recommended for us. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me. Sounds like a great idea.
What does a Black Griffin look like? Is it
like it's a griffin pamphlet with a sword.
All right.
You look more like a velociraptor than
There was this wonderful tournament when I was living in the West. There's this group of stellar humans called the Fellowship of the Argent Angel, and they do a lot of pause and special events. And they had one where there was a helm shot, and there were ribbons that the gallery gave out that challenged them to do things in certain ways. It was so fun. And one of the challenges was a melee battle of everybody who had animals on their arms, done in the style of the animal on their arms. And so I always think about that when I'm all the different heraldic beasts and everything. It's like, well, what would that look? How would you actually do that? So there really need to be more of those types of SCA events where people can laugh at the fighters.
Sure.
Just my.
They get laughed at no matter what. So
Yeah, well. So that's actually brings us to our first question, Gwen, because you are a fighter, and I'd love to hear about your SCA origins, what brought you to the SCA, and sort of who are you in the SCA in general, for those of us who haven't never had the pleasure of meeting you in person. So,
okay. I discovered the SCA in high school, my senior year, and went on my own to a fencing practice, and found, like you do with the SCA, that bunch of people that's really great right from the start. That was the first summer I went camping in my entire life, which was through the SCA. Dove right in, became a principality officer, just kind of hit the ground running. I was a fencer at the time. I was a fencer for 8 years. And then I did have the break that happens when you have kids. I had 2 kids pretty close together, and we took some time off until they were really, able to be at an event on their own so that you can have an event. And restarted actively playing about 2009, 2010 with my now husband, Reese. And that actually gave me the opportunity to do heavy fighting. I had wanted to do it from the beginning, but when you're a poor college student and you're living in a group that doesn't have armorers or a very big heavy community, you do the fighting you can do, which is why I started with rapier. But we were living in a bigger barony, and so at that point I dove right back into fighting. My main art is calligraphy and illumination. So jumped in with that and kind of been running that mark ever since.
That sounds great. Do you have a branch locally that you play with in Northshield?
Yes, I am in the Barony of Yarra-Vettler, which is out of Madison, Wisconsin.
That's how you pronounce it, Joel.
yeah, no, that's what I said. You heard me wrong.
My college roommate was from Madison, and she moved out. So I went to Evergreen, which is here in Washington State. And she was just like, oh, there's mountains here. We have this thing in Madison that people call a hill, but once they come here, and because we have very hilly areas here in Washington State, they're like, there's no comparison. It's just like,
we're pretty flat.
Yeah. So I just remember how she was just like so astounded by how hilly it was. And I'm like, well, wait till the first time we get snow. And then you'll see why streets that are at a 40-degree grade aren't so great in the in the snow or at all. So yeah, but that's cool. Yeah. Go ahead, Joel.
I started playing in Shadentor, which is on like the opposite side of the kingdom in Rapid City, South Dakota. So, and we had hills there, and I thought they were pretty impressive. And then I got stationed down in Colorado, where real mountains are, and how to fight without oxygen, which is something that the Outlands is famous for. So, yeah. You had been playing for a while. Around what year did you start playing?
1997.
So you'd been playing for a while by the time you had your first reign. What kind of advice would you give to someone that may be looking to where their fighter may be stepping up and are looking to becoming a consort at the royal level for the first time? Like basically, what would current you go back and tell pre-first reign you?
I think my advice might be different for someone else versus what I tell myself, but my biggest problem was I became immediately self-conscious when we reigned, you know, that moment when you realize that you're going to be in all of the pictures the next day on Facebook and all of this stuff. And when you're, my consort and I, we both fight crowns together. We've always fought, both of us. And so when you're training for the fight, you don't think about the part where you're on stage if you manage to win. And that really threw me for a loop. And it took longer than I like to have become comfortable. And like, I kind of forgot that, but this is my SCA, these are my friends. And, you know, I became super self-conscious and forgot the fact that no one's there to like pick on me or ridicule me or anything. These are still my friends. I'm just standing over there instead of over there, you know? So relaxing into it and kind of remembering why you do the SCA is, I think, a really good piece of advice if this is something that you want.
You know, I think you're the first person to bring up the sort of that dynamic of being photographed and how that can be really an interesting thing to navigate, especially, you know, depending on how you were raised or the culture that you are brought up in, how self-conscious you might feel or what types of things you might feel self-deprecating about it with your own body. And I know that my first reign when I was princess was before Facebook even existed. And then our first reign, most of my friends weren't on Facebook. We were all on LiveJournal or whatever still at that time. Right. And it wasn't until my second reign when everything started becoming documented as soon as it was happening. And how sobering that was to be like, oh my God, like there's no chance that, you know, you can't do anything. You can't do anything really silly. You can't, you know, like it's all going to get published somewhere. And that there are sometimes there's a need to create some boundaries around that and to ask people to be more careful about what they post. Right. Because it's, you know, people need to think about these things. Is this respectful? Is this, you know, helpful to post? And I'm not always sure the answer is yes, but it's also people can do it, but that should they do it?
Right.
It's just something I think about. And I also think that the documenting of the reigns and documenting of people's, people getting their awards, like that is very noble, but all too often what we get are pictures of the royalty and the backs of people getting their awards.
Right.
So, you know, you don't even really get what the best possible view of that, which is the view the royalty gets of the person who's receiving it.
And I noticed when there's pictures of when I was just a champion having to stand up near the thrones that pretty much every picture of me is like I look completely zoned out. So I think if I ever had the opportunity to reign, I'd like have to work on that because I'm always like,
yeah, you have to watch your face. It's about watching your face, because especially when you're heirs and like all the business is going over there, you got to watch what went through your face because everyone's seeing it and you're not used to being in the front, you know, but everyone's seeing that reaction you have. And the last thing you need is a photograph of you having like this terrible reaction to a moment because you heard wrong or whatever, you know, and then it's just going to take everything away.
It's true.
Your face.
I have a really severe natural resting face. I don't use the B word, so. But sometimes people are like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing's wrong. I'm just thinking. If that's wrong, I don't want to be right. So, but it can come across where people are like, oh, I saw you over there, but you look, you know, really grouchy or whatever. I'm like, I wasn't grouchy. I was just thinking about my shoes or whatever. So, that can be tough too. And the champions are sometimes zoned out. It's really boring. Right.
It's a long time to stand there and usually hold something heavy and be like.
That's why we should really give them jobs to do instead of just standing there. They should have jobs appropriate to their stations. Yeah. So like the heavy fighting champion should have to like, I don't know, clean the king's armor. And maybe the equestrian champion should be whittling toy horses for people. And I don't know, we should definitely think about how to exploit this. What do you think, Joel? You've been a champion.
I don't want to. No, I don't want to clean someone else's armor. That's gross. That's what my spiders do.
You can clean your own. That would probably be an improvement too, right?
But like all of my armor is not stuff I would show in court, other than my helmet. There's a reason why I wear so much fabric.
That's maybe problematic in and of itself.
No,
but we'll leave that.
no, my kit looks good, man. So one of the questions that I like is there kind of like a funny or humorous mistake that you made while on your during your reign that you could maybe use it as a teaching moment for someone where you might have had a slip of the tongue or done something where afterwards you were like, oh, yeah, something kind of like funny and humorous that you may not mind sharing with the group.
Well, I had a hard time kind of thinking about this because I've heard you ask this question before. And part of that self-consciousness that I had is like, I just kind of blocked out like large chunks of what happened. I was lucky to be surrounded by a group of people who was really big on kind of diffusing my fear by being silly when I couldn't figure out how to be silly. And I think some of it like fighter mentality, I'm not used to having like people wait on me or having like a parasol over my head in the sun. So one of the times we were and I'd always get up during events, like from the throne, if we were supposed to sit and watch, I'd get up to watch the fighting or to talk with people. One of my favorite moments at Gulf Wars was, they caught me kind of out in the sun and there was kind of this cry amongst the Northshielders for someone who needed to get a parasol. And multiple people came running forward with parasols. And after I got parasol, they decided to just keep going down the retainer line of each parasoling each other down, which helped me forget that moment. But it's just about having, a bunch of crew that's willing to kind of shenanigate for you until you can kind of relax into it. But I mean, I blanked out. Probably people would probably tell you had a lot of fun moments, and I'm just like, I was terrified. So sure.
And you probably, as a Laurel, also maybe have apprentices. Is that?
I do now.
Yeah.
Now, I actually was elevated a month before Reese won Crown.
Oh.
So my first Laurel meeting, I was also princess, which was an interesting experience. I was not an apprentice. I apprenticed after I became a Laurel, which is its own story. But I do have 3 dependents right now.
Okay. Yeah, I refer to mine as vassals because it just appeals to me. Mm-hmm. But honestly, like they don't serve me, right, even if they wanted to. It's like, no, that's not a thing. But I know that sometimes when people come into reigns with established households, if they're peers, that can also take some of that pressure off because they're people you're already used to ordering around. So it can be, that can be a mixed bag though too, because they know you awfully well. So,
right.
Yeah. And I know, so sometimes people come from kingdoms that have really strong established households and some people don't. It's just all with whatever is the part of the local culture that, or where you grew up.
Right.
So when you started your reign, did you have people already kind of installed in your life to help out, or how did you put your retinue together?
We have some big households in Northshield. My household is actually fairly small and really informal with my knight, because like I said, I wasn't an apprentice, but I was a squire. My consort was also an unbelted king. So he was also squired. So we had a small core of people there, but we had people in the arts community, some other social groups that all kind of came together. My consort's really a big archer. So the archer and thrown weapons community. Northshield's really good at a big everyone pitch in and help on a reign, especially if you're willing to ask for help. We were kind of not expecting to win the crown that he won. So we had no wardrobe. We didn't have all that stuff. And we had to do a lot of building, but it was really easy to put together work days because people were super willing to come and pitch in, and it was really great.
And what reign were you?
We were reign 24.
Okay. So it takes a while to build up all of that too, just within a kingdom.
Right.
And you were part of Northshield as it became a kingdom.
Yes, I was around for a lot of that.
Okay. So, and what was that like?
It's really tricky because we were far enough away from kind of the central location of the mid-realm that we already, at that point felt really independent, but there was some social pushback that at first it didn't seem like it was that different when we kind of had our own reigns. Sorry. But it is different to be a new kingdom when you've been a principality for a long time and realize that a lot of people kind of forget you off the list of kingdoms because, you've been a principality forever or whatever. So it takes a while to get your feet, even though you think you know what you're doing because you've had principality reigns.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have in Ontir, we just had a principality go to kingdom not so long ago, and have 2 other principalities. And, there's always stirrings afoot that one of them could become a kingdom, and they certainly have the population for it. I think we just have lots of people who just like being part of this big kingdom. So there's also just that, like, how do you divide up a culture, a shared culture, is always a concern. And here our principalities are all kind of central. They're not off in the, Avacal was off, right, sort of divided by literal, like, Rockies, geography. But the other principalities are sort of downtown Ontir. So it is challenging.
Right.
If any new kingdoms are made, though, pick something other than a griffin for their heraldry.
And it can't start with A.
There's too many A's. I know. Ontir included. Avacal. It's like everybody's trying to get up further in the alphabet. So somebody needs an AA name.
Aardvark. Kingdom of Aardvark. That was the only AA I could think of. I'm sure there's other ones out there.
Appreciate that.
I'm helping.
Yeah.
So you've been fortunate enough, the SC has been fortunate enough to have you around, and you've been playing for a while. You're up here and a Rose now. So you probably attended a few vigils either as a reigning royalty or just with your friends, or walking by Gulf Wars and seeing a whole bunch of free food set out, but you had to go talk to somebody. What's the core of the advice that you like to give to someone who's about to be recognized as a peer?
So my standard is usually the idea that at some point you will be the first peer someone meets, and the people you meet from now on will only have known you as a peer. So that will consistently reflect on the peerages in general. There are going to be people who have never known you not as a peer. And that's kind of one of those things just to kind of keep in the back of your head. We've had a lot of blow-ups on social media about what is and what is not peer-like behavior and how all that translates. And I think that people, especially those first couple of years after you're elevated, you forget that line that happened between when you weren't a peer and when you are one now, and how in the people who don't know you well, you changed massively. It's something you don't see, but to the outside, you have made that jump. So it's just keeping in mind that you might be that first peer for someone and that influence that way. But it's not like let it get to your head, but just remember that there's that division there that now your life is going to impact differently.
I had a moment with that where, because I was knighted on the field at Estrella, and literally the very next battle that I fought, first time going out on the field with a white belt, I had this moment where I recognized that people who had no idea anything about me, they now saw something different, because we were doing some kind of battle, and these 3 mercenary looking guys, you know the type.
Yeah.
They broke through the line, and I was hanging out behind the line because I fight without my glasses on, so I can't actually really see that far. So I'm usually just hanging out wherever people scored there, and then I go and fight. They broke through the line, so I walked over there, and there was 3 of them, and I was just going to make some noise, and they formed up into a little shield wall and backed away. And it took me a second to realize that gentlemen knew nothing about me. They just saw a knight walking up towards them. And so that was like my first like real moment, having that like, there's an outward sign here now that people are recognizing, where I'm not just the guy that fights in a weird black dress kind of thing. So I don't know. That was my moment there. I used to fight a monk stroke. Okay.
Hey,
So,
Joel, what do you say at vigil? I've never asked him that, Gwen.
Well, I'm never being interviewed, yo. It's always just remember who got you there, and it'll be catered, but it's there's the normal, like, your words may have a little bit more weight now that you have that built up, but that it's just remember who got you to where you are. That right, being recognized as a peer of any of the peerages is not a lone trip. It is, it's because of the support of the people that love you that helped you become the person that you are. So yeah, I'm not being interviewed here, Dag. Knock that off. Your question.
What? No, it's your question. You have the next one.
You.
Mm-hmm.
My question.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll do pictures.
So you mentioned, how everyone remembers like their first peer, or that, eventually they're going to be the first peer. My first peer was Rotor, by the way.
Nice.
But who was like your first mentor in the SCA? The first person that you looked at and you're like, yeah, I want to be like them when I grow up. And do you want to give them a shout out? That's important, because some people in hindsight.
So it was one of those, like, when I first started out, like I said, I was a rapier fighter. The household I was with was kind of a mercenary household. We were those people over there who kind of play, you're not actually sure we're playing the same game when you go to events and you see like the royals and everything, and you're like, not sure we're at the same event. But Duke Siegfried von Kalmbach was one of those fighters. He's a two-stick fighter.
I know you didn't say this, but I heard von Humbug. Was that correct?
Von Kalmbach.
Okay. I'm sure that he's heard that before, but it was just literally what I heard. I was like, there's no chance of that passing the herald, right?
No. He's one of those, he's a two-stick fighter, which is also my main weapon form. And he's just one of those guys who he moves like no one else does. He's got kind of an MMA background. And comparatively at the time, he was one of those, like, he was down to earth, and he'd come and talk to everyone. And there was no boundary between kind of that high-end SCA game and the mercenary-ish game we were playing over there. He was just friendly and nice and kind, and could fight in a way that I couldn't even comprehend. And I'm lucky enough that we live in the same barony. He's currently one of my coaches for Crowns. We get to work together, but I'm still kind of astounded all the time at his generosity when it comes to both training and teaching and just hanging out with people.
Nice.
Yeah, that's nice. We all have mentors, and some of them remain worthy of being our mentors, and sometimes they don't. And you guys know who you are, just one too many bouts with a bottle at an event or something. We see the seedy underbelly, though honestly, even at that point, I still have mad amounts of respect for people with how they can apologize after being terrible. So, it's not just what we do, it's how we make up for it.
I get smacked upside the head a lot.
That's right. How do we restore peace after? Okay, well, I'm going to get some slides going here so we can take a look at some of your friends shenanigating.
Such a fun word.
Did I say that right?
Shenanigating, that's a thing.
Okay.
We do a lot of shenanigans.
Well, you said you go to Gulf Wars, and shenanigans is like the whole thing of Gulf Wars.
All right, can we see this now?
Yeah.
All right. I have some questions.
Sure. Fire away.
Yeah. Tell us about this picture.
So, okay, there's two concurrent stories that happened here. This was shortly after we won Crown, I made a post on Facebook because I was doing my princess homework and I was reading our book of protocol. And the book of protocol said that, you know, all of the stuff inside is pretty much a suggestion because court belongs to the crown, and the crown could do court on their head, standing on their head if they should choose. And I said, well, that kind of sounds like a challenge. This was also during our main yearly fundraiser. Okay. So we put it up there as an auction item. And just for individual people got favors for donating for it. We raised about $1,200.
Nice.
We did court literally standing on our head. This was at our Bardic event, Bardic Madness. Yehuda, who actually ended up being our heir, is doing court there. He read one piece of business, which was a cipher for the gentle who had written the Book of Ceremonies. And he read it in as a stretch goal in Marvin the Martian voice. So we had to kind of orchestrate clothing. My champion actually also stood with us in court, but we managed to pull off court standing on top of our head per the Book of Protocol.
I love it.
I don't know what I'm more impressed with, the handstands or that y'all have a Book of Protocol. Like
Really funny. I participate in Shouty Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my main connection with His Excellency, having been introduced via the inspirational equality circles.
Because they were our heirs. We got 2 boys that day. It was really nice.
That's right. But Shouty Thursday is a really good practice, and I do recommend it. It's Thursday, right? Shouty Thursday, not Shouty Tuesday.
Shouty Thursday.
It's how I know. This is how I know a week has gone past, is that there's another Shouty Thursday where everybody responds in all caps, and I think it's brilliant to just let people get that out of the way. So well, this is great. So we're going to move on to the next slide, and we admire the athleticism and also this place you found that has this lovely blue carpet. That's unusual. All right.
So these are my main besties. Ouyang is currently in Meridies. She is in the Tang Dynasty on the left, depending on how you look at that, and Katarinka in Northshield. We're referred to as the Legwife Collective, which is a very, very long story, but enough people kind of know that. But these are kind of my best gals.
Nice.
So this is my art household. Actually, on the elevation of the mistress of our houses to Laurel. She was a pelican. So in the handkerchief is Master Danner, who was my Laurel for a year and a day after I was elevated. In the center, there is Master Crispin, who we elevated during our reign, and I'm sneaking in on the end there.
Master Crispin looks like he's up to something. I just want that.
Usually, he's one of the biggest shenanigators I know.
Yeah, he looks like he's up to something.
He brings the most amount of fun into things, especially the archery community.
And I hope that people who produce linen understand how important we are as customers, because I'm looking at a lot of real linen clothing here. And
Danner's a blacksmith.
Okay.
So and almost all of us have blacksmith with him, and we have learned, especially at Penzix and stuff, that natural fibers and all that.
That's the way to go. That's right. This tell us about this.
So this is my fighting household a few years ago. My knight is the one with the white belt in the center. You can see the Circadian. This was one of those crest tournament where you had to have kind of some version of a fancy crest, and we found these hats at the Halloween store, and I found a period reference for sharks, and so we could document it, but we just bought them, and you had to knock the crests off, but you could hit them and the eyes would go flying because they're just like ping pong ball. It was so much fun.
That's beautiful.
But yeah, they worked perfectly to suddenly make crests. They're little kids' hats.
Tell me which one is you.
I am on the far right in this,
Okay.
in my very, very early kit.
Okay. With a shark
Unless
head. This is really
wild Rasheen in there.
Yep, Roshin's in there. She was Reese's knight.
This is why I think we're going to be okay in the SCA. We're not reenactors. This is kind of where the fun happens, is with stuff like this. I'm okay with this. As long as we know that's not period, that's what matters, right?
Whatever. She found documentation
I did
for
find
sharks.
documentation, but
That's fine.
Period.
That's fine. Yeah. I love that the eyes would go flinging off. That's just
so this is one of those stories. I had driven up with, so 2 rains after ours, my night rained. And we were driving together up to a place near Thunder Bay, Ontario for an event because my friend Hanman was going to be knighted and it was going to be kind of one of those one and done. So we were going to be there. I mean, he was king at the time or he was prince at the time, sorry. And it was the whole point of going up all the way to Canada for this event. And in the second to the last bout of the fighting, which was going to be the setup for putting him on vigil, I dislocated my shoulder in the middle of my fight.
no.
And the hospital was an hour away. So I did have to, and I wanted to wait for them to put him on vigil. So they, everyone very carefully stripped me out of my armor and sat there while they finished everything. And then there was the torturous 1-hour drive to the nearest hospital to get it put back. But I ended up missing his elevation and everything that we came up for, and managed to dislocate my shoulder in the process. But this was my first major fighting injury. I still weirdly look happy, which I think is scary. But it's that rite of passage sometimes that you get to that point.
Are you prone to dislocations or?
This was my first one.
Okay.
At 40 years old. And it healed really well, which is good because this was in June, right. And I fought in that Fall Crown in October.
I just love hearing about people's conversations with their doctors who are like, you do what? With what?
I took my sword to PT and I said, I need to do this again.
Yeah.
This is
They're
what
like, okay. I love that.
So this was the last crown we had. That's my newer armor. That is my consort Reese. And the very tall gentleman who was our champion before was my man at arms and is now Reese's squire. This is Eirik.
It looks like Reese is wearing a white belt now.
Yep. He was knighted about 1.5 years after our reign. This is one of my favorite fighting photos. This was at SCA 50 year at the Arthurian Deed. This was one of those moments where I was terrified out of my mind. I was queen at the time, and I got it in my head to sign up to fight the deed in front of the crowd of people. And my kingdom came out in spades. We had a small contingent there from Northshield, and they made a cheering gallery to envy all, and they were just amazing. But it was one of the first times, especially when I got this photo, that I really felt like a fighter. And it's kind of been one of my inspiration photos in my head. And that was an act that really brought me outside myself to do something that felt bigger than what I would do.
It's cool.
Yay, we had kids. Okay. This was great. These are, of course, the oaths of our heirs, which were the first same-sex heir reign in the known world, Yehuda and Roder, at the end of that crown tourney. And that was a really, really good day. And I remember we went from this directly into kind of the royal room to give a few minutes to decompress. And I had to I was also social media at the time for the kingdom. So I had posted the pictures and this and that, and I had to shut off my phone because I was really afraid it was going to just light on fire from the amount of just explosion that happened when this happened, which was amazing. And they were wonderful to work with for the rest of the reign.
Awesome.
Oh, this is another 50-year shot. See, that's me hiding again. I'm right in the center.
It's a cute picture.
We were taking pictures that were formal, and Shava told these were my champions for 50 years, and she told them all to look at me. And this is what happened when they all decided to. But they were great. I was embarrassed, but that's me. I learned a lot. This was my profile picture. I'm wearing the Ayers cornet, but this was kind of, it was really important to me to keep the identity of a fighter as a consort. So this was kind of the imagery that I used as my profile picture, and just as kind of an inspiration in that sense of you can be both things.
It looks like a young adult novel cover, like something like
between two worlds,
like historical fiction for teen girls that need to be super inspired and influenced to do great things, that type of awesomeness. So it's really cool.
Let's see. So we have one of my favorite things about the Northshield Marshall community is we actually have a group. I don't know if codified is the right way, that works together, that is for our non-male population. For all the martial activities, archery, equestrian, thrown weapons, heavy fighting, and rapier, we have our own online group. We talk together a lot. We give each other advice. We meet up at least once a year just to support each other in that sense that we are a minority. We have worked on mediating talks in the heavy community between the non-male fighters and the male fighters when it comes to things that make us uncomfortable, things about practice sites that feel unsafe, things about, actions that feel threatening, behaviors that aren't acceptable. We've had those talks. And that's been one of those places that, especially as a Rose, I have the ability and the privilege to be able to be a voice for those who don't want to speak up, who might be scared of those big night guys who seem grumpy. They've all sworn at one point in time an oath to me, and I don't mind keeping them to that even now. And I'm not scared of them. And
I will say that, as because I kind of perfectly fit the demographic of people that just don't think about that, because I'm a guy, I'm white. I don't, I fall into all the demographics of where I don't think about it. So when there are people that are willing to stand up and go, hey, this wasn't cool, or hey, this is what we're thinking, this is why it's an issue, or this location isn't cool. Like, I know I personally genuinely appreciate that, because it's stuff that I don't think of, because I've never had to think of it. So, I just wanted to throw that in there, that I think that's awesome, because yeah, I know I personally appreciate it when people make sure I can better understand and support the fighting community, or, just the SCA in general, by going, hey, this is why that's dumb, don't do that.
Well, and it's a question we like to ask people, is to talk about the way we navigate our roles as peers, and each of us have, within our spheres, that responsibility. And Joel, I think that how we accept critique of things that we love, including things that we may be directly contributing to, that's really important. I consider that a really important role of a peer, is to take in critique and to act on it when that's possible. But the other side of that is to be genuinely grateful for people when they raise issues, and that we can't do anything about it without knowing about it, but it costs people. There's emotional labor, there's risk, they become vulnerable, they may be seen as troublemakers. Like, there's a lot going on there, and recognizing what that costs people is also something as peers that we can help make easier for people, make that risk less. And acknowledge that it doesn't cost everybody the same to speak up.
Right.
So it's
as always.
What's that?
I said you're eloquent as always.
Oh, well, thank you. But I think we've heard a lot of people talk about this and sort of maybe circle around it in their own way, but it seems to be a recurring theme with that a lot of peers are thinking about this, and how it affects things that we might have taken for granted in past years. So inspiration equality being a great example of that, that people just let that happen for so long to not allow people to fight for same-sex consorts. And I think Northshield has a lot to be proud of for being the first kingdom for that to happen in. It's very cool. I didn't realize they were your heirs, and I think that's really, yeah. So and I'm guessing that to support that, Northshield was able to make sure that all of your customaries were.
We already had non-gendered language in a lot of places, especially our laws, but we did go through and change like the website to say consort and sovereign and stuff like that instead of king and queen.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that was pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's in general, it's painless. Programming part of the website's kind of not my forte, but people adapted quicker than you would think. And maybe there were more negatives. I chose to just ignore it because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
In general, it was received well here. I think we were a good kingdom to do it. And in the grand scheme of things, the people we had, Roder and Yehuda are both very established. They're very well known. They're both adored in their own way. And they brought a dignity to it, but also fun, and in a way that they really recognized what they were doing and the impact it was going to have. And they did a very, very good job of lighting that way.
And that's really important because my understanding is they were not a couple. Is that correct?
No, they are not.
And that could have been done in ways, not even intending it. It could have been done in ways that were not respectful of what the stakes really were for a lot of people. So it's really good to hear that from somebody who lived through their reign. So that's cool. We'd like to get him on here sometime. So maybe I'll start working on him so we can interview him. So, and we don't have to modify any of our questions either, because they're not all about like, girl stuff. I'm not even sure how we would modify them to be about only girl stuff. So yeah, and it is tough sometimes though, because Ladies of the Rose just rolls off the tongue so easily, right? But
it's habit at this point, and that's one of those things you have to change. Like I was saying earlier when we were talking about the stuff with the fighting community, is we use male fighters and non-male fighters. It's not male fighters and female fighters because we have non-binary fighters. We have other people who identify differently. That became our inclusive term as agreed upon by the community. And when it's important, people should take that moment just to learn the language. And I mean, it's pretty ingrained at this point in Northshield, and you can work the same way with consort and sovereign or whatever terms you choose. But that's how you make people feel included, is you use the words that include them. And it's minor. We all learn new names for people. We learn new names for places. We can learn a couple of new terms to replace things in order to make other people feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I heard somebody joke that, people can memorize like 50 different iterations of a Pokemon's evolution, but can't remember what somebody's preferred pronouns are that make them actually feel safe and self-actualized. And I'm like, yeah, let's put in like sports teams into that. Let's put in, any random information like that. Like if you can remember that much about something, you can definitely include someone's like sense of safety and belonging as a priority. So, but maybe that's it. We just need to make it into a Pokemon thing or something. We can, or dinosaurs. People remember a lot about dinosaurs. We just need to we need to do it at the right age, apparently.
Sports ball. If it's sports ball, I'd remember. So we're good.
Is that right? See, I don't remember anything unless it shows up a lot on a crossword puzzle.
Oh, that's fair.
That's how I know who Bobby Orr is, because that's on a lot of crossword puzzles.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah. So I run a trivia night, and we don't have sports interested people. And so if somebody wanted to come in and be a ringer for one of the teams and answer sports questions, they would totally kick butt in the sports categories because nobody knows anything. We're just like, I don't know. But of course I have to ask the questions because they're on the cards.
Right.
So that's
I'm
how
just
this
gonna flood it with nothing but 1960s baseball questions now.
I have those questions available. So anyway, Joel, we'll talk offline. Maybe I should get you to come and play sometime.
Right.
So
Was it me or you at this
You,
point? I actually, was it me? Was it me? It was all me. All right. Sorry, I kind of lost where we were at because I was just having so much fun listening in on this. So you've been able to play. You were around when a kingdom transitioned from probably from a principality to a kingdom. You've had a reign. You've been fortunate enough to see a lot of your friends recognized with awards. What is an award, though, that you would create if you could just snap it into existence? No politics, no drama, anything. Just an award that, and it can be at any level. But what's an award that you would create, and what would it be for?
I would really. So we did actually kind of finish creating an award during our reign. It was already in the laws, but no one had actually put a name on it, which was a service award for groups. But one of the things that at this point I am passionate about is a peerage level recognition for the archery thrown weapons equestrian community. So that is really high on my list of things that I think we need to fight for at this point. So if I could, and if those politics were thrown out, because I was around for when the mods were being created, I would make that happen.
They're calling it the omnibus right now.
Omnibus carriage, yep.
Yeah. They have a cool little heraldry. I've seen the thing on it. I haven't actually been in like the Facebook group. I've seen it, and
Right.
it has a little doodad is not the right word. Device.
Like a sigil.
Yeah. Doodad works though. So, yeah, and I know there's a lot of really strong opinions one way or the other about the omnibus peerage. So yeah, there's a lot of feelings on that one from what I've been told. What's your favorite event though? Favorite event in the whole SCA?
Probably our summer camping event, which is Dub Warriors and Warlords. We abbreviate it to do 2 W's. WW. It's kind of a baronial. You started out as a baronial war between Nordskogen up in Minneapolis and Yara down in Madison. One used to have Warlords Day and one had Warriors Day, and they got thrown together. But it's our big summer camping event. It's 5 days. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of I don't want to say mini Penzic because that's a terrible way to phrase it. But it's the longest time kind of we all camp and hang out, and it's relaxed enough that you get to have the groove of setting up a camp and actually enjoying it instead of like for a weekend. And everything, we have torchlight tourneys. It's actually called the Bad Baroness tourney. Baronesses are the only ones who can sponsor fighters, and there's a lot of shenanigans and kind of teasing back and forth and kind of wordplay stuff in order to kind of, make it fun for the audience. And there's everything from tourney fighting to melees to all the arts, and it's kind of our everything event. So it's one of the most enjoyable times to sit even just at camp and hang out with people because everyone's there.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Dub. Never was able to make it myself because I always had to kind of choose which event to go to and the time of year you used to be in. And then, when I first started playing Quest for Camelot was still a really big event. I don't even know if they still have it anymore. But Dub's always been on my list of priorities. Now I'm down in Iowa. It's actually going to be a attainable goal whenever we can start all playing together again. And on that note, weekly plug, if you haven't, please renew your memberships, think about supporting your group, make sure the SCA is still here. So if you haven't renewed your membership.
That's why you should renew it for 3 years at a time, because
True.
then then you feel really old when you have to renew it again. You're like, it's been 3 years already. How is that even possible? But also, then you don't have to think about it for 3 years.
Right.
Which is nice. Actually, I don't think about it at all because my husband does that for me because I forget those kinds of things. So he's responsible for renewing our SCA memberships and making sure that we have car insurance at all times because I'm like, I'll bring in money. Just make sure it gets spent on the things that are super time sensitive. So we never are without, those really important things. See, Joel?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I just hand my wife money and go, hey, pay stuff, please.
Yes.
So, so what is what's your bucket list event? What's one of the big events of the known world that you just want to go to so badly, but haven't been able to make it to yet?
I'd really like to get out to Australia or Great Western War. Like I said, I've done Penzic a lot. I fought at Gulf Wars, but I really want to go west. And we went to Battlemore, which I really, really liked. We did it at the tail end of our reign. It was the weekend before we stepped down. We went out there and I loved it. So I'd really like to go all the way further west.
Yeah, Battlemore is one of my all-time favorite events, and it's for anyone watching that may not be from that area, definitely look into that one. It is an amazing event. Their new site is beautiful. It's like got a stream running through it and everything, very picturesque. Yeah, it's Great Western War is amazing too. Australia I go to because a lot of my friends go to, but it's not really my thing. But it is a really fun event. So.
See, nobody ever talks about whether or not there's flush toilets and hand washing stations at this event. And really, that is my single most important criteria for any event is avoiding dysentery. So if it's like one part of the SCA, I do not want to ever recreate GI distress as part of our medieval experience. So if an event has hand washing stations, please put it directly in the event copy. We should have a little icon for it that goes next to the name of the event on your calendar, where it's like you are going to be able to have meaningful access to warm water and soap at all times, even if you're camping out of your car, even if you have nothing else, you can wash your hands at this event. And I think after the pandemic, we're going to be a lot more aware.
Super mindful of that. So we're going to be super mindful of that.
When we were reigning, we wouldn't consider event bids for Crown events unless if they had porta potties, if they didn't have hand washing stations. We actually made it a requirement. They all had to have them because we sometimes camp on primitive sites in Ontario. So they're not all beautiful fairgrounds. So it can be, yeah, you gotta, come on, you gotta be able to wash your hands. Anyway, I would like to hear a little bit about what keeps you going in the SCA and what inspires you. I mean, you've achieved so much, you've reigned, you're a Laurel, you've held a bunch of offices, which sounds like a lot of work.
Fighter.
So yeah, what do you continue to work and strive for in the SCA now?
My current big goal is that it's my turn to win Crown. Like I said, my partner and I have always fought them together, and he won the first one, so this one's mine. So fighting has been taking over most of my training time outside of since the reign. But I also stay really active in the arts community. I really like teaching beginners in a new art. I'm self-taught, and I learned a lot of art, and I do a lot of art in different mediums. And I come into it with a base assumption that I can teach just about anyone anything they want to learn, at least the basic level, and we just wing it. We've had some great disasters, but I enjoy it because I try to make art as relatable and reachable by most people. So I think that ability to work with people one-on-one and always be meeting new friends that way is one of the things that keeps me going.
That's cool. I think most people say people, that is a recurring theme, but I think when you have a very specific goal, like I would like to win crown. That's pretty amazing. And it's also something that we continue to see fighters are able to aspire to something very directly like that. But sometimes it's harder for people that are not in the fighting community to be able to state such a definitive goal for themselves.
Right.
You know, saying something like, I want to be a Laurel. You know, some people still feel uncomfortable doing that, which I think is really silly. If you want to be a peer, this is my PSA. If you want to be a peer, it is okay to say, I would like someday to be whatever the peerage is. There's nothing wrong with that. And anybody who makes you feel bad for saying that is a barrier to your success. And you should step over them and go on to the next person who is prepared to meet you and your aspirations in the spirit they're intended, which is with help and support. So say I, nobody Duchess from the far Northwest, but you can come talk to me if anybody ever gives you grief about that.
I've always said that it's okay to want it. It's not okay to covet. And so as long as you're not coveting, I think that's okay. You know, it's never been an issue to admit that you want to be it. I never understood that taboo, I guess.
There's, you know, I think some of it may be rooted in some sexism, including internalized sexism around recognition and the Pelican and Laurel orders being as non-fighting orders. It's not okay to want something that is supposed to be a recognition of your excellence that's somewhat subjective. And I get on some level why that is the case. I mean, I think it's one thing to say, I'd like to be worthy of a Laurel someday. I'd like to be doing Laurel level work, or I'd like to be worthy of being a Pelican. I'd like to be doing Pelican level work. It's another thing to say, I should be a Pelican already, or I am going to be a Pelican someday. And it's like, well, that's a recognition. It's not a,
well, are you though?
I mean, but I think, but saying this is what I aspire to be. I aspire to be doing work of this caliber and to be a Pelican or to be a Laurel. That is okay. It's also okay to want to be a consort and reign. Mm-hmm. There is nothing wrong with saying I'd like to be queen, or I'd like to be a consort someday. And again, I think there's a lot of internalized sexism that prevents people from saying that outright. And if you want to reign as a consort and you aspire to that and you have a noble path to get you there, then you should follow that path and surround yourself with people who understand your aspiration and will be good to that aspiration and supportive of you. And that we need to stop using terms like hat chaser and belt chaser and things like that. It's really degrading, and it also minimizes the contributions that people who date people who fight well, it minimizes their contributions in the SCA and their contributions to that fighter's success. And
I think and this is weird, but like one of the happiest moments I think I've had in a long time was when I was recognized as Aniela's husband. Like, and that's kind of a silly thing, but like
I get it.
That was like one of the happiest moments I've had in such a long time, was when I was recognized that way, when someone was like, "Oh yeah, you're Aniela's husband," because she's a badass artist and she knows this stuff. So, but like it's weird little things like that kind of bring it home on what you're saying, where the recognition's there. So, anyways,
thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Hi. All right, we're back on the soapbox. Your Excellency, obviously the pandemic and the ongoing global bastard has kind of changed how we fundamentally play the SCA, and by that I mean it's paused it almost entirely in the way that we knew it. What do you see the SCA looking like on the other side of the COVID rainbow? What do you think it's going to look like whenever the pandemic is kind of under control?
I'm hoping it's mostly the same, though.
Hand washing stations.
What? Yeah, hand washing stations. I'd really like that idea that we have it a lot, especially in the Midwest, especially in winter, that you go to an event and you get sick because someone came sick, and hopefully that is something that actually we can keep not happening. People feel comfortable wearing masks if they're feeling ill, or staying home if they're feeling ill. We learn something from this. But I also think we took a lot of time during this pandemic to have a lot of awkward conversations, especially online. It's bad that it mostly centered on Facebook because it's hard for the people who don't participate in that medium, but I'm hoping that that means that there will be a place for some of those changes, whether it's in equity or in what we do and don't tolerate. So I'm hoping that we use this time wisely to make some strides forward, that we can hit the ground running to make sure that we are being as inclusive as possible. We're allowing people to feel safe, that we've learned some stuff from those conversations across the known world that people suddenly got to participate in, to learn about how other kingdoms do things and how they perceive things. And it would be nice to keep that worldly view. And I really hope we keep broadcasting classes and courts and some other things that allow the people, especially in an aging population, or Northshield's one of those giant kingdoms, not everyone can drive 18 hours to an event. We need to keep doing those things that we do now for inclusivity when we start back up again, because we've opened that door, and it would be really, really foolish to shut it when we can keep it open.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you bringing up an aging population, because even though we're not square in that bullseye yet, a lot of folks are, or people have been living in the SCA with disabilities that are affecting their mobility or other things that aren't even age related. My son is autistic, for example, and camping events are almost impossible for him. Like it's just really, really challenging to go with all of that sensory input, and the
Sure.
not really having any kind of meaningful way to control the environment for him. But when you're around people who get it, and you have campmates who get it, and you're at events, where he doesn't have to go in a chemical toilet. Again, he can go into a flush toilet. That's part of the reason this is important to me too. But when you know that those things, like somebody's thinking about that and is planning ahead for increasing enjoyment for everybody, it really does make a big difference. And we see it. And I hope that people know how much that's appreciated when they're doing that, making sure that there's RV camping space sufficient that everybody who wants it can get it, and that it's not like on rough terrain to get
Right.
from there to the main event, that type of thing. Like there's lots of, I don't care if I can see RVs, I can see someone's red plastic cooler. I can definitely look at an RV,
Right.
It's all about like, what's the total cost of having people included, and helping people to understand that the cost is much less than the benefits, right?
Right. And we've learned so much in these last few months, and it would be really a shame to suddenly cut people off from things that we've been able to give them with not much trouble.
Yeah, and I think that's been the sunny side to all this, is that we and this is for everyone that's out there providing the content, to whether that's the Kingdom online courts, or the classes, or the interview series that are being hosted everywhere. Whatever it is that we've shown very easily we can extend out to include people that may not be able to do these events, or may not be able to travel, or they may have neurodiversity to where they are unable to cope with large groups of people being in one place. There's so many different things that we're able to accommodate to. So I think that's been the best part about all this. But oh my God, I miss fighting so bad. I miss it so bad.
I don't miss loading the trailer, unpacking it, and then packing everything back up. That is one thing I'm like, I definitely need to dial that in a little better in the future, because like it is the most miserable experience as far as I'm concerned.
I put actually, I looked it down and I wrote it about. I put like somewhere around 11,000 less miles on my car last year than what I normally do.
Isn't that incredible?
Events. It's crazy. So
what's the furthest, Gwen, you've ever driven for an event? Wait, What's the furthest you've ever driven to fight? What specifically?
The crown that we won was an 18-hour drive from our house, because we are on the far eastern side of the kingdom, and Northshield's another giant kingdom. It was on the far side of the Dakotas, because we are 2 countries, 3 time zones.
Yeah, it's like Ontario.
It was an 18-hour drive there, so it's a full, it's a multi-day thing.
That's how it was when Avocal was still part, and they came down to so many events. It was just incredible, and it rarely did people reciprocate, unless like we only went up because we were reigning. But that, at least, if you have a kingdom where the royalty can get around, that's something, right? Do you have a travel fund in Northshield? Yeah.
One of the things our main, originally, it's one of the reasons we started a big fundraiser. And now we've done some adjustments to Kingdom Law to get a little bit more in there, but it is usually a fundraised kind of aspect.
Yeah.
But it's part of that expectation though of a reign, is that you need to travel. We're a big kingdom. You should be committed to getting to all of it.
Right.
And we have, as a benefit, we have a long airship too. So a full reign from air to the end of your reign is 11 months. It's a year.
I thought you meant airship, like a dirigible, and I was sitting here like,
wish we had.
They have a long airship. Like, wow, they must be the only kingdom that has like a Zeppelin or something. Like, oh my gosh, how did I miss out?
How was that not in the notes? Why did they not tell me?
Dirigibles.
Dork.
That's a terrible word.
What I hear is always funnier than what's actually said. So
it's one of those words that only makes sense if it's written down.
Right. I love it.
But yeah, so you have 11 months.
Yeah.
Which also is a huge commitment. I mean, that is a year of your life. But I liked traveling around. We were blessed by having the amount of time to take off. And you have to commit to it. But then, the following year, you're just like, I'm just gonna go hide in a corner for like a year. Kind of to get out of the way of the people who follow after you, but also because you're just burned out from all that.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, it's gotten easier with things moving to electronic. And I mean, not this last year, but our second reign versus our first reign was such a difference. In our first reign, everything, like all the award recommendations came via email. We printed them, we kept paper files, and just literally in that intervening time of, I don't know, 5 years or whatever it was, Facebook came online. We moved the awards process to an online, there was always an online form, but we moved the actual storage of those online, which meant you could keep track from reign to reign.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Award recommendations instead of looking through a paper file that got handed off. Like, what century were we living in? But, we needed somebody who could actually do that for us. And then somebody had to go, wouldn't this be a good idea? And then somebody had to do it. Right. So, it sometimes it takes a little while, but, it is night and day difference. My husband's reigned more times than I have. He has reigned 5 or 6 times, 6 times, I think, 7. I can't remember. Oh, that's so terrible. But it's changed dramatically since the times that dinosaurs roamed the earth when he first reigned. And it is significantly different and much more complex. And we have way more people, and it's much more difficult to get around. You can't just hop in a car and drive down to down to the west for a weekend the way people used to. It's a major commitment. And so that contraction of doing things more locally, I think, is happening here, where people are just sort of, even before the pandemic, they were tending to kind of play a little more locally and invest in their local groups more. And we need to make sure that that kind of participation is honored and valued just as much as showing up to the kingdom level events.
Right.
So, especially in a place like Northshield, I'm thinking about that geography, right? It's like, what if somebody can't drive 18 hours?
Right. And it's one of those things that comes up, it's like, the people from the West are like, well, I never see them here. And the people from the East are like, well, I never see them here.
Right.
And that's that idea that you can get, especially in the arts community, it comes up more that it's harder in fighting. You can get word fame now without having to literally drive to that event. You can teach online, you can become an expert, you can become a source. Because that's one of those things that comes along with, award recs as you get up, especially as you get to peerage, is that idea that people should know who you are in your, outside of the circle you work in, but you have to get that word fame. So there has to be a way sometimes better than traveling 18 hours back and forth, because that's a place of privilege. That's the money to do so, the time off of work to do so, the gear to do so. And there's got to be a way to help people around that, because otherwise it just becomes an elitist game, and that's no fun.
I would love for somebody, when we do return to in-person events, if someone could come up with a meaningful system of measuring the amount of distance people travel to get to events. I would love to kind of, even if we just looked at it from a carbon footprint standpoint,
right?
When we have people sign in, I'm like, couldn't we just have them sign in and include their zip code?
Right.
And then even if we just measure from the furthest reach of that zip code to the site, how many miles are people really traveling to get to events from their home zip code? And to start looking at that math and looking at the equity issues that come out of that.
My second event I ever went to was Penzic 33, which was the last Penzic before Northshield became a kingdom. And I had never been on a long road trip or anything like that. And I went from the far western end of Rapid City, South Dakota. And about halfway through that drive, I'm like, this is not worth it. I'm tired, y'all. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So of course, and then I got there and I'm like, what is this craziness? Because my very first event was like a small Shire level event in the middle with 30 people, and then going to Penzic, I'm overwhelmed and this is amazing, and I'm gonna go run around and do all the stupid thing young kids do at events. And then I found out about the two chucks and fur bikinis, and then I was hooked on the SCA for life. It was the whole thing. So, but I mean, we've day tripped we've day tripped 9 hours one way to go to a friend's coronation before. Hopped in the car, drove 9 hours, went to the event for until they stepped up, and then we had to hop back in the car and head back. So that's a thing. So,
but that's a stunt. Like, that shouldn't be an expectation.
Oh yeah, no, that was just because it was our friends that were stepping. It was our friends stepping down and our friends stepping up. Very dear to us. Yeah, we just wanted to do that more to see if we could. So,
right, it was a stunt. It's like eating haggis.
That's good. Haggis is good. I don't care what anyone tells you. Haggis is good to eat.
You're perverse, and that's okay. I embrace that about you, Joel. So, so our formal interview has drawn to a close. Have we covered all the most awesome things we can with you, Gwen? Is there anything else that you want to do a shout out to, or?
I do kind of have one of those funny moments, really quick story, because I think it's important, because I am not the only Countess Laurel Gwen. I don't know if you've heard rumors of that. There are 3 of us. And I discovered it through a friend's Facebook post. Constantia out of Callantyre had made a post, and it just said, 2 of the 3 Countess Laurel Gwens I know are drinking Apothic Dark. And I literally had that Looney Tunes moment of trying to figure out which one I was the one who wasn't, and I didn't understand all the stuff that was going on. And so through literally that moment, I got to meet Countess Laurel Gwen out of Callantyre and out of Meridies. So we kind of have our little secret cabal. But that's one of those weird SCA moments where I now have these friends in other kingdoms that we have meetups at Big Wars, and we've hung out, that I only know of because of a connection of a friend in Callantyre, so that's one of those wild kind of SCA moments that makes me really happy.
That's cool. And actually, when I posted about this interview tonight, someone who lives over in Idaho in Ontier asked if we were interviewing the Countess Gwen that used to live in Lion's March. And I was like, I don't think so. But she's like, well, there's a couple of them who
I
I'm
went,
like,
I went to Fiora for an event, and I was getting introduced around, and I'd have people be like, yes, I now know 2 out of 3. And they'd walk off, and I'm like, okay. So we have to do something with it at some point, but I've never been kind of like part of a counting group.
it needs to be a triptych.
So what I'm hearing is that we need to get a formal meet together at Golf Wars whenever we can start playing with all of our friends again. And we can have like catered foods, and there can be the Countess Laura Gwen like club.
It'd be
And
fun.
we'll cater food and booze, and it'll be a great time.
That sounds like a really good idea. And Gwen, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for taking the time and taking the chance on a couple of yahoos that you didn't know at all, and who are know-it-alls. So that's like an added obstacle to enjoyment. But we really love talking with you, and your openness. And I appreciate that you are someone who fights in an environment that isn't always friendly to people who are not male. And I appreciate that too. I don't fight, but I love the representation and having a fighting queen. We've had a few different fighting queens participate in these interviews. And there was a time when women weren't even allowed to enter crowns and weren't permitted to be considered for the chivalry. And, you know, that's in our past, but it is part of our past nonetheless. And I see that and appreciate it. So if we were at an event and we were sitting in state, there would be a basket exchange now, and we would send over a basket of goodies to you, and you'd probably send one to us, and there would be lots of oohing and awing over the contents. And since this is a virtual basket, we can put anything we want in it, anything at all. But my people would have come over and asked you already, or somebody on your retinue or in your household, what kind of wine you drink, white or red?
Red.
Red wine, okay. And light milk or dark chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
And puppies or kittens?
Probably puppies.
Okay, so here's the deal. We are giving you a beautiful gift basket. You've probably heard me say this before. It will not have handles because baskets with handles cannot be packed in your car. Oh, look at
puppy.
Puppy for the gift bag.
With handles can be packed easily in your car. So though knowing on tier, it's probably actually a big, cool wool bag that's been embroidered. It's probably not even a basket. And in it is a bottle of red wine. And I don't think Rapid City, where are you? Great Rapids, Rapid City?
Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids, whatever you're from. I don't think it's really a wine area. So we're going to go with a nice, some kind of elegant red blend from Eastern Washington. And I say blend because we have amazing red blends here. And, you know, something super drinkable that you don't, it's not so fancy that you don't mind just popping it open to have with a burrito. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you're given a bottle of wine and you're like, this is a $40 bottle of wine. I don't even know what to drink this with. You know, what if I don't like it? Does that make me a bad person? So it's not one of those. In fact, we'll give you 4 bottles so that you can just enjoy it and share. And then some kind of wonderful dark chocolate. Joel needs to find a local chocolatier. I think he said he found one.
We found one, but it's closed because of the plague. So
okay. Well, then you're getting Franz chocolates from Seattle, which is that was the Obama's favorite. So I'm just saying it's really good stuff. So and it's virtual because they're super expensive and we're not actually sending them. And then what we're going to do is bring a pile of puppies and you can roll around with them and you don't have to take any of them home. You can enjoy them right up to the point that you're finished with them, unless you really want a puppy, but most people would probably just rather give them back to the owners. So what kind of puppies are they?
Probably going to match mine, which is a King Charles Cavalier.
Oh, okay.
Cute. All ears, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what they are. And then you get to give them back. And then I'm also going to give you a lifetime membership to the Duct Tape of the Month Club. And they specialize in your kingdom colors, whatever those are, purple or whatever.
Black and gold.
Black and gold.
Black and gold. Okay, great. They specialize in your kingdom colors and whatever you want. But each month they also deliver you a novelty roll of duct tape, that's something unexpected, you know, like, I don't know, gargoyles or, you know, exotic tropical fish or whatever. And so one of your challenges is to try and use it in clever new ways to
And
incorporate.
then I will very casually just put like a pair of like Redder gauntlets in there. Just, you know, casually drop those off.
Casual. Yeah.
Just drop those off in there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're only like $1,300 gauntlets. So we'll just casually drop a pair in there. You know,
this is a fantasy gift. We can put whatever we want in there. I don't think we haven't been reaching high enough. You know, we need to be aspirational in these gifts. So, and I wish we could really give you those things, or at least a hug. Do think about coming out to On Tier for Sportive Kings the next time we have it, because that seems like it would be right up your alley.
Oh my God, Sporting Kings is the best event.
They have flush toilets and sinks and hand washing and sidewalks. You can like walk on stable surfaces.
Nice.
Very excited about that every time I go.
Sporting Kings is just an amazing event. I plug it to everyone I can, and because Duke Sean got me hooked on the idea of going, and yeah, that's an amazing event. So
it's a really fun event.
I'm gonna try and make it to Dub Dub whenever we're all fortunate enough to have it again. Are you a hugger?
Somewhat, but not always.
Okay, like elbow bumping or fist bump. Okay, cool. Because I'm a hugger, but I also am so cool with fist bumps and everything. So
or you can just fight me. That's enough.
Yeah, we're definitely getting fights in. I'm an evil lefty. You're a two sticker. We'll see where things go from there.
I'm not a hugger either, not really, because they hurt. But I will come and sit right next to you.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? Like where your shoulders are kind of touching, and it just feels very comfortable. That's what I'll do.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us this week. This was a really great conversation. I just looked at the clock. I didn't even realize that we went a half an hour over again, because we do try to keep these to an hour. But
well, I would stop talking. We would stay on schedule. You can say it. It's all right.
Like everything about this is just making fun of me. Like I really did enjoy this conversation. So thank you so much for taking the chance to hang out with us. It was great, and you know, this will be loaded up to YouTube whenever it's on there, so you can make sure to show your friends or however you want to approach it. For everybody watching from home, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate you. We appreciate your time. The normal rules are being thrown out there: wear your mask, wash your hands, renew your membership, believe in science, show love to each other. We will make the announcement shortly on who we'll be interviewing next week. But for now, thank you so much, and everybody have a great evening, and we love y'all.